And innovation, frugal or not, I guess any innovation should not be extravagant, it should be frugal, I mean that's logical. But is this something we are overselling? Question. It would be great, if we have a magic bullet for our problems, if we can have a vaccine to immunize children against poor learning, or an antibiotic against the learning deficits, things like that. But of course it doesn't work that way, that you know. So what is it, that we need more innovation, or we need to try harder to understand and make the familiar things that we know, maybe it works or it has worked in the past, and then how to make this work on those which work, rather than innovation, all right? Now that itself may be considered an innovation, to make the familiar things work better. Now that's another way of looking at it. Maybe that's something we can think about. So, all right. So the reality. Now you have heard about, or you may be familiar with a couple of reports that came out recently, just very recently. One is the World Bank's World Development Report. This time, first time, they focused particularly on education, on learning, and the title here is about the realizing the promise, I think. We are counting on education to solve many of our problems. And the second one is the Globe GEM report on accountability in education. And both of these also talk about the system and the accountability of the governance and so on. And so they do talk about this, but they also, I think the interesting thing about both of these, those who have had some familiarity with this or had a chance to go through some of these things, also are talking about the real world, the realities that many of the developing countries have. And one thing particularly, sorry, I'd like to the technology and I don't go well together. Yes, that's right. Okay, so what I'd like to emphasize is we have been talking about teachers quite a bit, and I'd like to suggest that, can we focus on teachers? Innovation, technology, all this better teaching learning, effective teaching learning. It has to do with the teacher, the centrality of teachers. No system can be any better than its teachers. No school can be better than its teachers. And we haven't found yet, I think, teacher-proof technologies that really work in learning. Maybe exceptionally here and there, but ultimately it has to be mediated and facilitated so on by the teachers. And what are some of the kind of snapshots on the teacher situation? Talking about India, from a sample, 24% of the teachers were found absent in primary school on a day when they went to visit this unannounced. India, I think our Indian colleagues can verify this, India has largely stopped recruiting new regular professional teachers. New ones are recruited as contract teachers, low paid, low education, fixed term, very often untrained. There is lack of trust and confidence in teachers. There is social distance between, especially the disadvantaged rural population, social distance between the teachers and the students. Teachers who come from the neighboring town, somewhat better off, maybe higher caste and so on. In Bangladesh, teaching is the, and I think maybe true of other countries in this region, last occupational choice for college graduates. And young teachers who even take the job in the absence of anything else are looking for ways to get out of it. All right. Snapshots. Assessment, we have talked about it quite a bit. We have high-stake tests on, I'm not talking about all kinds of assessment. I think we have had a good discussion. Assessment can take many forms, and assessment for learning, assessment as learning is something, formative assessment is something I think more useful, more productive. We have, but too much emphasis on assessment of learning. High-stake tests, narrow measures lead to, these are quotes from the World Development Report, leads to efforts to gain the system which punishes the marginalized. In Bangladesh, we have 4 high-stake public exams at grade 5, 8, 10, 12 before tertiary education. Test taking, model tests, mock tests, private coaching, memorizing, test guides, guessing test items, etc. These have become the total concern. Pupils have become not learners, but test takers. So that's a major issue here. The Indian National Crime Records Bureau statistics report 2,672 students committed suicide in 2015 because they did not do well in public exam. In Singapore, which is considered a model of good educational performance, 86% of students are anxious about grades in their exams, 76% very anxious for a test, even if they themselves thought they are quite prepared. For all OECD countries, it is 65, 66% and 55% respectively, which is also pretty high. Okay. Another side of the reality. One there. Okay. Okay. I think maybe you have to stay around. Let's reload. Okay. No, wait. We have to go to the next. All right. Sorry about it. So, what is happening? We have talked about it. We have schooling without learning. Even after 7 years in school, millions of children cannot read, write, or do basic math. A learning crisis is what I think GM report and World Development Report is talking about. Young students are already disadvantaged by poverty, conflict, gender, or disability, reach young adulthood without even the most basic life skills. The learning crisis is a moral and economic crisis, says the President of World Bank, Jim Young. In rural India, nearly 3/4 of students in grade 3, I think that's Pratham report, could not do a 2-digit subtraction, such as 46 minus 17, and by grade 5, half still could not do it. We can find similar examples from the other countries in the region. 260 million children who, for reasons of conflict, discrimination, disability, and other obstacles, are not enrolled in primary or secondary school. 40% of children primary level in Pakistan, 30% in India, 25% in Bangladesh are walking away from the public system because they do not get the service they need. And are they getting it in the private system? You can answer for yourself if that is the case. Gates Foundation recently, Bill Gates talked about his education technology project started 10 years ago. And they have come to the conclusion, what made the most successful schools successful, large or small, was their teachers. It became clear that teacher evaluation is one important piece of the several critical elements to drive student achievement. And last, schools are the unit of change with the teachers. So we have to, what I'm arguing is we have to reimagine the teachers. I mean, how to focus on the teacher. I mean, all the things we talked about are important. The technology, the innovation, the creativity. But no, for it. Sorry. Okay. Yeah. So the last 41. I just wanted to quote Horace Mann. I like this particular quote. A teacher who is attempting to teach without inspiring the pupil with a desire to learn is hammering on cold iron, and you know what happens. So it is the inspiration that the teacher can provide. And so in Bangladesh we need many more teachers. I'll not go into the details. We need at least double the teacher at the primary level to have some minimum ratio. The secondary level, we don't have subject teachers for the core subjects in many schools. So we need many teachers, but it's not just the number. That's the point. Okay, next one, please. Next slide, last slide. Okay. The reimagining the teacher. So what I'm trying to say here is that I'm talking particularly about Bangladesh, and this may apply to other countries in the region, is that we need teachers who can inspire the pupils. And how do we get that? There is no pre-service professional training or certification for school teaching in our country. It is a casual and default choice as an occupation. And it is the occupation which attracts or absorbs a very large number of the college graduates, the largest single occupation for college graduates, but this is all happened incidentally, by happenstance. There is no career path for teachers. Most secondary school teachers begin career, primary, secondary school as assistant teacher, and they retire as assistant teacher. We need a plan, 10-year plan for national initiative to bring in and keep talented young people in teaching 4 key elements in that. Education should be a major area in the 4-year general undergraduate program. We have to capture young people after high school, start them along for an education career with education as a major area as part of their undergraduate education. Not in teachers' colleges, in general degree program, along with other subjects they study. This is what happens in many, many countries, in China particularly, that I have seen. So, and the basic skill set they can get as an education student, communication and psychology and interaction and things like that, are useful in life, wherever they go. But once they are there, maybe once they come out of it, they may stay in teaching, and talented students should be recruited competitively with inducement of stipends, etc. But where do they go? I mean, the degree colleges, they are in such a bad shape. So we must take about 100 degree colleges, have a good program there, have good quality there, good program of education as a subject, have good curriculum, good teachers and so on, and enforce some quality standard, and have along with it a national teaching service corps, something like civil service, national teaching service corps, which is well paid and with good reward, and those who come through this system, they have to agree to at least 5 years of service in teaching, and where they will be assigned to a school, and then probably many will continue if they get a good job and have the reward and the status once they get into it. And this way, I think we can create a nucleus of quality all across our country with these teaching service corps graduates in the schools. So that's the suggestion I have, to focus on teachers to improve pedagogy and improve quality of education.
Thank you, Manzoor. Thank you. I would now request Fahmida Shabnam. The earnest request would be that let us give attention to the time to the extent possible.
I'll try and make up for the time. And just a good news is that I don't have to struggle with the technology. I'll just talk from my notes. So that makes that I'll make sure that I finish my talk in time. So throughout the day today, we have heard about the challenges of education, and to address that, we heard from the first session about financing, and then technology, like Manzoor has already pointed out, to assessment, and what assessment, why assessment is important, what role assessment has played, and which gives us the information of why children are not learning, and then going on to why they are not, using that data and try and find out why those things are not working. So who is actually, so how do we actually improve learning? What works to improve learning, and do we know that? I think there is enough study that has been done over the years, and then in the last 2 years, 6 systematic reviews that compiled information from 227 studies which looked at how to improve learning outcomes for children in low and middle income countries. And of course, these reviews are not precisely the same. They're explicitly different in inclusion strategies. Like, for example, some like Kramer et al. And McQueen only include randomized control trials, and some like Cohen and McQueen only look at how to improve learning outcomes, while the rest looked at both learning and access. And but all of them had one common theme, which is like they were all seeking to identify what improves learning outcomes. And from these studies, the systematic review summarized to 3 main points. One highlighted that pedagogical interventions were the most effective. Another that highlighted on that information and computer technology interventions raised the test scores most, which has also been demonstrated through sessions today. And the third one highlighted school materials are the most important. And as you can see, and also as Manzoor said, that there is no one magic bullet to improve learning outcome. It works in different ways, in different contexts, in different recipes. And on that, I think to address the issue of learning, I don't think we really need to be too revolutionary with regard to pedagogy. And by now we know a fair amount about what makes a good classroom practice, and a lot of innovation has been done across the world. Referring to, again, Brookings, that has been referred to like twice today morning already, who has actually looked at 3,000 innovations across the world. I'll just talk about where these innovations have taken place. And this is the largest repository to date about innovations. And they have found that innovations are taking place everywhere. And within the energetic and dynamic communities, 166 countries, poor and rich alike, covering 85% of the globe. From the poorest, Nepal and Afghanistan, like Gautam pointed out, to the richest, Canada and Australia, like Marcus pointed out, some innovations. And from underperformers like India and USA to a relatively high performer like Finland and Kenya. And what they have shown is that civil society organizations have been leading on the innovations, which through this Frugal Innovation Forum we have also been witnessing, is that it's almost the civil society organizations, private sector, who are leading on these innovations. But with all of that, what we really do not yet understand fully is that why these best practices are not being implemented by the teachers. So you guessed it right. I'm also zooming down to the teachers, the center of the learning. The teachers are actually at the forefront. They are the ones who have to make sure that these technologies are used, the assessments are being conducted, learning from the assessments are being used again to improve classroom learning and classroom learning. And what really happens when we do not ensure that these poorly trained, under-resourced and demotivated teachers are being made effective? So that has an enormous effect on the learning education performance. Student learning outcomes are low. 200 million children are estimated to be unable to read or to basic maths despite completing primary school. And we know that also in Bangladesh, 1 in 4 children only completes and meets the grade 5 completion competencies. And poorer marginalized children are neglected and many experience violence leading to dropout without achieving the key foundational skills to prosper and break intergenerational cycles of poverty. And another aspect is that financial losses from teacher absenteeism, which again Manzoor also touched upon, is that it represents 2% of the GDP, like loss of 2% of the GDP. Filmer in 2015 said, like in the world development, using the world development indicators, estimated that $1.4 billion has been lost in 5 African countries in 2013 because of teacher absenteeism. And also we are learning from surveys like Service Delivery Indicator Survey that some teachers don't have the right subject to be able to teach to the right level. For example, in Madagascar, only 0.3% teachers were able to correctly answer on the content they were teaching 8 years old. And Bolt et al. In 2016 used nationally representative surveys from 7 sub-Saharan African countries to show that only 1 in 10 fourth grade teachers mastered their students' curriculum and a quarter failed simple numerical and comprehension tasks. So I think it's really important for us to understand the motivations, incentives, constraints better for our teachers so that we are able to support and enable them as the central actors in our education system. And given that the theme of this seminar is frugal, I'll just share 2 examples from 2 countries where we have worked to motivate engaged teachers. One is from Stir in India, where they have actually worked in intrinsic motivation for teachers, and they have done some really good work in India and Uganda. And what they have done is that they worked with, they built teacher networks, local, ongoing communities of practice that improve teachers' effort, classroom practice, student learning, and financial efficiency for education system. From a return of investment perspective, every dollar they have invested into this approach was likely to recouping $7 in improvement of teacher effort for governments and over $100 in increased lifetime earnings for citizens through better learning outcomes at the child level. And preliminary results from an independent evaluation for this program has shown, it was done through a World Bank funded randomized control trial in India, that strong and statistically significant impacts on teacher motivation and effort and student learning in maths, as well as indicating areas to strengthen in classroom practice and reading. And in Bangladesh, one of the DFID funded project where we have called English in Action, where we actually worked to train our teachers as researchers. And another thing that came out throughout the day's discussion was that putting teachers at the forefront and teachers then subsequently putting the teachers at the forefront of learning. What happened in this intervention is that teachers actually asked the children to evaluate them. Like there are some funny stories that the teachers actually shared with us last week. We went through a series of seminars where we heard from the teachers, and I would have loved to bring one of those teachers perhaps in the earlier session as an innovation for her or him to really share their experience from this work. Is that so at the end of each class they would ask their students, is that how did I do in my class, can you like grade me? Initially students were not sure how to do that, but eventually through conversation what came out was that students felt empowered and they also were more attentive because they had to evaluate the class at the end. So that resulted in them learning more. So they were commenting on teachers' performance, what she did well or what she did not well, what they could have done well. And this resulted in teachers improving their own performance. And this did not cost at all. So this is another, so these are like small innovations, how we can work with the teachers to improve their motivation in the classroom. And I'll finish very quickly. So what are the key challenges for teachers? And DFID's R80 note on teachers explored 5 key generic points. So there are 5 points. Poor selection method. So teachers are not selected, we do not select the right teachers. And we do not really select, especially in Bangladesh, this is not a preferred profession for most of our students. And we have inadequate professional development and support. It's not sufficient. I have some more details, but I'm not going into some of this. I'll just mention the bullet points. So poor incentives and motivation for teachers, poor accountability around teacher system, like whether teachers, what we are teaching the teachers, whether they're going and applying in the classroom, how that is being effective. No one really looks at that. No one really follows up on that. And the whole political economy issue that constrain reform, even where there is the appetite. So, and the final question is that how do we actually have teachers in our classroom with the 21st century skills, not for our students, but for our teachers, so that they can develop the 21st century skills in our students. So that's the first question I think we need to ask. So I know that I really did not answer a lot of questions here. I actually left you guys with a lot of questions rather than answers. And I guess that's because my job is, as a donor, is who is here with the buck, not a lot and not for too long, that I'm looking for the bang to enable change and at scale, and from frugal to the next stage with a bigger impact. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Salma, it's your turn now. Salma will be also making the action that she has had over the years at the university, and while doing justice to her time and
So what is my time limit? 5 or 7 minutes.
It's always short in time.
I know, being a teacher and a talking machine, how can I manage?
We'll all help you with a big side of this.
When I say talking machines, that indicates the teacher-centered pedagogy in our country, especially Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, in this developing world. I mean, the teacher education program. So, Shubho Purano, good afternoon to you all. And looking at the audience, I can see most of my ex-students of our year, and I feel proud and privileged to be here. Thank you very much, Dr. Shabnam Islam and Professor Manzoor. And Dr. Manzoor Ahmed was my teacher. I'm also a teacher, and you are a teacher. So when Dr. Manzoor Ahmed pointed out that teaching is the last occupation we choose, my question is, why teaching is the last occupation we have to choose? So I want an answer from you all. I want to mention one thing here. Even George Bernard Shaw once said, if you can do anything else, if you cannot do teaching. And when I went to UK, London University Institute of Education, one of my teachers of economics of education, Mark Bloch, he's very famous. He wrote in his introductory chapter that one who cannot teach, do the research. And one who cannot do the research, write the textbook. So it's all related. Here, I would like to focus on Professor Manzoor's and Fahmida's deliberation. Professor Manzoor has rightly focused on one person who is the teacher. And teacher is one of the best teaching tool in the world. And teacher has not been replaced by any technology or any innovation or anything. No virtual world has been able to replace the place of teacher yet. And I'm here, since morning we have been seeing very, very vivid example using of technology, text-heavy sort of a presentation and everything. I was quite amazed. And I am a vivid example here of a teacher in Bangladesh, primary or secondary level, without any technical device or nothing. But this is the real situation in our country. The question is, who will be the 21st century teacher in our country? What should be his or her qualities or skills or competencies? When we heard the deliberations in the morning, especially the learning skills of the 21st century, the educationists have divided these skills into 3 aspects. One is the learning skills, the other one is the technological skills, the other one is the life skills. For learning skills, you all know, they have deviated from previous 3 R's to 4 C's. creativity, creative thinking ability, then communication, and then collaboration. As a teacher of the 21st century, what should be the criteria? What should be the characteristics? What should be the competencies of a 21st century teacher? That's what I want to get from you. Because I'm not a telling machine. I believe on the interactive method, participative method, and also I want the participants, the audience, to make their suggestions, to give us some ideas on the policy changes, on the teacher education program, on curriculum, and also the teacher educator, continuous professional development of teachers. So that's you all. I must say, as a teacher, I mean, what we can do is a sort of it can be a sort of a social movement. I know teachers, they go on for a movement, for their service benefit, for nationalization, for this and that and whatnot. I'm speaking about Bangladesh. And also other countries, especially the developing countries, the Southeast Asian countries. But what about our own development as a teacher in the classroom when we say about quality pedagogy? Because what we teach as a teacher, that should reflect on the learning of our students. So as a teacher, we have to develop ourselves. The development depends on the teacher development plan or program. If I speak in the context of Bangladesh, there are some positive changes has taken place. That is at the primary level. The government has introduced 18-month diploma in primary education, but that is still in service training program, not pre-service. So we cannot attract good graduates, good educationists, good number of students to be a teacher. Then there is another problem at the secondary level. Still, we have a pre and as well as in service, but the good number of graduates we cannot attract due to different problems, which Dr. Manzoor has already mentioned. What I want to suggest to Professor Manzoor, that is we should have a long-term policy, 10 years, 15 years, like the Vision 2021 and or 2030, that is for a comprehensive teacher development plan. As a member of the National Curriculum Coordination Committee, I suggested to include teacher education as a subject at the intermediate level, at the 11 and 12 grade. Then we also suggested to the government to introduce education in all the public universities. And Professor Manzoor has given a model of 100 degree colleges, but we suggested for an open education as a discipline in the public universities, faculty of education, and then remodeling, redesigning present teacher education curriculum, and also the continuous professional development of teacher educator as well as teachers. Hundreds of these training programs are going on for the primary level school teachers, secondary level school teachers, even for the university level teachers. World Bank funded take a project. But the teachers are not being competent to teach the 21st century learning skills to the learners, what we call, Michael Kulan said, deep learning. So in that case, I think we have to thoroughly and intensively think what should be the future teacher education program and how we can gain and how we can scale up our quality of learning in the classroom pedagogy. Thank you all. Thanks for this.
Thank you, Salma. We have around 10 minutes every day before the next session starts. Going back to the floor, any queries, any observation, any comment? My suggestion is, since time is short, we'll take all the questions fast. And please introduce yourself, and if you have any specific panelists in mind, also point it out. Okay. So we have 1, 2, 3, So I see 3 hands, 4. Okay. We take all 4 questions first, then we go for answer. Yes, please. So please be brief.
Yeah. So my name is Akhter. I'm from Kishore, Bangladesh. So my question was, we have been talking a lot about that we need to improve the model where the teachers training is different, teachers training is more improved in order to teach the teachers how to teach the 21st century skills, right? But at the same time, we are also saying that teaching is the least preferred occupation among the young generation. So what can be done in order to make sure that teaching is not actually the least preferred job? It's preferred for the people who are talented and who can actually come in this sector and take up these new skills and deliver it for our kids. Thank you.
The next question. We'll take all the questions first, then we'll refer that who wants to respond to which one.
Thank you. I'm Ismail Murshid. I have come from Dhaka University. I studied in international relations. My question is about assessment to Professor Manzoor sir. That when I was a student of primary school, I have come from very rural area of Bangladesh, it is Hobbyganj. I have experienced that when my examination was held, I become sick. And when I studied in Dhaka University, I experienced that when there is a final examination, several of my friends become sick after thinking that the examination is coming at the door. Right? Why it happened? The second question is that why we are making the education as a competition, right? When we are publishing the results of the HSC or SEC, we have seen that several students are just holding their 2 fingers and that they are winner. Right? Why we do like this? Because if we make this as a competition, the students are not going to learn anything. They are just going to participate in competition. They are just trying to develop themselves to win a race, nothing else. There is no qualitative experiment by which we can assess these students. Now, my question is that what should be the assessment actually, by which we can identify that, okay, our education system is going well? This is my question. Thank you.
Thank you. There was one more hand over there, and then the last one here. Yes, please.
Hi. My name is Frugal. I'm coming from 5Y1 and my from this Research Foundation. So my question to Professor Manzoor actually, just putting another provocative thought on your provocation. So how about we go back to the century-old proven method, like in pedagogy, like the guru shishya kind of thing, because that actually excel quite a bit. So how about we bringing in the technology itself to scale up that model? Because what happens sometimes, that it's not really important what the teacher teaches. It's more important what the teacher is. When it's kind of a full persona of the whole thing. How can we make that kind of teachers? Because the so-called teachers training so far failed in that aspect. So how could we bring in all kind of like thinking skills, emotional intelligence? Those kind of skills can be trained, and the motivation and the passion about it. How we can bring? Of course, with that comes with this social recognition of the teacher and why talented people should go into teaching those kind of things.
Thank you. The last question is on this table. So there are 2 hands.
I'm Meher from DFID, Australian High Commission. My question to Dr. Manzoor Ahmed is, in one of your slides, you have shared with us the 10-year plan, like we all looks to us as all pre-service training for teachers. But can you kindly advise us, because these are all the recommendations that you have given, that this can be done, to improve the teachers' quality, which definitely linked to improved learning outcomes. But my question to you, can you advise us, or do you have any thoughts of how we can convince the government of Bangladesh to include pre-service education in the primary sector, which is a challenge for us?
Thank you. Final emotion.
Well, I think one of my areas has already been covered by Meher actually. As Manzoor is here, Salma also is here, and for me as a regular participant in the quality area for primary education, she has just spoken all those. But one thing is very clear, I think, from our experiences, we could not make our political intention separate from the development of education, educational thinking. all these questions like pre-service training or learning assessment is deeply rooted with all this intention, because I don't want to see during my regime when I'm in the power that children are not learning. I don't want that people from other parties get a job while I'm in power. So in one or another, I want to dominate in the area. From the policy perspectives, how can we really influence all this? Is the challenge? Is there any sort of thought? Exactly the point.
Thank you. My suggestion is the question 1 might be addressed Fahmida. Question 2, Salma. Third, fourth one, directed Manzoor by and motion by have more of the observation in so who will start from?
Please be very good.
So, on teacher training, I think if we look back, this is a problem of the current generation. Like in the past, we have seen when our fathers were, when our fathers, with our fathers and grandfathers, we really saw that teachers were actually the most respected person in the community, and they were actually the best students wanted to become the teachers. But right now, it's not happening. Why is that? Like perhaps it's the global, like we have moved on, technology has moved on, jobs have become more diverse, and at the same time, the teacher position is no longer glorified. So teachers are not really the most respected person in the community. So and when I mentioned to the intrinsic motivation, that's actually at the heart of it. Like sometimes people offer a solution that it just increase the payment, like because teachers are not being paid well, that's one of the reasons why people do not want to become teachers. That's not correct. That has been, because it has been evidenced in Indonesia, where the government has actually doubled up their salary of the teachers, but it did not result in any improvement in learning outcomes. So the solution is not there. What's important is that teacher needs to be valued in our society again. And you do find that there are some really fantastic committed teachers who are making tremendous changes and who are actually doing wonders, and I'm sure you are a teacher, you also know that. So it's that satisfaction that matters at the end of the day. So we need to bring them up, give them the motivation, give them the profile they deserve, and give them the respect they deserve, and I think that can result in doing wonders in our classroom.
I'd rather like to add, not only the children are afraid of assessment, but also their parents. You know, it's not the exam of the children, but also the exam of the parents as well. Well, it's again within our weakness of the total assessment system, and the assessment is based on rote memorization, not on the students or children's overall creativity, overall characteristics and overall quality, because we emphasize all the rote learning on memorization, and we don't involve them in the interactive activities. We don't involve them in knowing and doing things. And this is one thing. And the other thing is continuous assessment has been replaced by this public exam at the end of class 5, class 8, 10 and 12. And these exams are mostly a sort of a, I must say, again, rote memorization, because we don't assess all aspects of the children's development, total development. And the assessment has become so coaching dependent, because the teachers do not finish their teaching, learning, total teaching, learning activities at their school, so they go for the coaching and they chase after the grades. And that is one of the main reasons of the children being afraid. I mean, if he or she cannot do well at the exam, then they'll just stop. So assessment, as Professor Manzoor Ahmed said, that is the assessment of learning, assessment in learning, and assessment for learning. We don't have this kind of system in our country. We have only assessment of learning at the end of the and what the students have learned. But as we know, our teaching learning activities is still weak, and only one method teachers are following, that is teacher training method. So the students, they cannot their learning achievement is very weak, and that is the reflection in the exam and their applicability. I think are you satisfied with my answer, or do you have any other suggestion? Thank you.
Manzoor, you have barely 5 minutes to answer.
Thank you very much. I think the idea of going back to the Guru Shishya model, I mean, that would be wonderful, but society has changed, values have changed, and so on. So maybe we are not going to, recreate history like that. But the idea of a teacher being a role model for their students, for the children, is still a valid idea, and that depends on what kind of people you attract into the teaching profession. That's what I was trying to, mention here, that we have to find good, bright, young, idealistic people, bring them into the teaching profession. And one way, I do not know if this will work 100%, but at least young people after high school, after 12th grade, you try to give them some inducement, stipend, etc., for a good program, good college. College education is also problematic. So you had a good program, and they have a chance to go to a good college, and they get a general degree along with teaching certificate, and you give them stipend, and then bring them on a competitive basis. And then from a young age, they look to teaching as a psychologically they're prepared to become a teacher, and prepare them for that. And that way, and then you have also a career path, not an assistant teacher for rest of their life, but assistant teacher, then a teacher, then a head of department, a team leader, vice principal, etc., etc. I mean, throughout life, a career and a status, and so on. So that way, I think it is possible to get better people. Now, the question is, how can we convince our policymakers? And that's the other question was about also, everything is about assessment and public exams. This is a populist kind of issue. Now, each government seems to compete with the previous regime that we are passing more students. More students are passing every year. So education has improved. That sort of thing. So, what do you do in this general problem, political problem that we have? Now, I guess only thing is for the citizens, for the public, debate and discussion and so on, raising these issues and making ultimately somehow making good quality education a political issue rather than just populist, results and so on, populist demand. But children are not getting a good education. They are not learning. They are not being prepared for the 21st century in a globally competitive world. And that should be a political issue, and politicians should be made answerable. So that's something, that kind of debate we should have more. I think maybe this forum is one effort in that direction, but a lot more work needs to be done here for all of us together. I think we have to work on that, but this is a tough one. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more burning question from the floor or any comment? It should be burning. Okay, please be very brief.
Yeah.
Because we really have now 2 minutes to conclude.
Hello, this is Ahmed. I work with Save the Children. This is not a question, just a comment regarding the assessment of children. You rightly mentioned that in our schools only rote learning or memorization is testing, like not behavioral change and other things. And in last couple of, maybe 10 to 15 years ago, GPA system was introduced in our country. And is it possible? I'm just asking. This is a request to you. You are the flagship or our gurus in education, and I think you can raise this issue to the policy level and to change the system. That total assessment system should be changed, not like what is happening right now.
Thank you. There was one word. Be very brief, and this is the last one.
Thank you. I'd like to just add with the Professor Emeritus to face the challenges macro level, how to address these challenges. So BRAC is organized this kind of session in ER. So policy level, working policy level, so they can be invited in this program, this sort of program, and the attendants who are attending in this kind of session, so they can be live in different forum, and because the change have to have from our own, from intrinsic change is very important. So if we can change ourselves, then definitely the system will change at a large level. So another issues we can take that this kind of forum can be telecasted in different medias. So that should be very communicated, and the authority, the policymakers will be very aware about this sort of discussion. So definitely this will go and it will impact on changing the essence.
Thank you. Thank you.
I would like to add to that. A long-term plan for the teacher development plan. I would like to suggest to establish a University of Education. Even the Pakistan and other countries have, so that that might add with the long-term teacher development plan. So do you support the idea, establishment of teacher University of Education? Thank you.
Thanks to all the panelists. Before I conclude, 3 points I would like to flag of that our panelists brought. Dr. Ahmed had a lot of good suggestions, but I take one that give a chance to the effective solution, proven which works, and it has an application. And his second point like to let us fix the basics, because unless we have fixed the basics, the technology and other benefit might not reach all. Fahmida is looking for 21st century teachers, and no doubt without that we will not be achieving 21st century skill and 21st century. Appa was asking why teaching is the last occupation to be selected by the people. These are genuine questions. My last observation is, if we look back, the human beings, the planet has progressed. The speed is pretty good. Yet we need very critical so that our momentum of change keep going, if not improve further, because the change is inevitable, and we have to be keeping pace with the expectation. But very important that we keep and fix the basic things. Thank you. Thanks to all 3 panelists and the audience, and the questions and comments that came from the audience. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, all the distinguished panelists, for a very wonderful, thought-provoking session. We will be having our last session of the day now, which is the third plenary of the day. Public-private partnership in education, lessons learned from the region. As soon as the participants from the other room comes in, we will start the session. Thank you.